Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into an abstract from the 14th Science Congress in India.
Yeah.
It's all about helping dairy farmers in eastern India boost their income.
Right.
The title is Fodder Cultivation, a way forward for doubling income of the dairy farmers in eastern India.
And it might not sound like the most exciting topic, fodder.
Yeah.
But stick with us because this abstract, it really has some interesting stuff. We're talking about a region that's part of the world's largest milk-producing country.
You'd think they'd be doing pretty well then.
You would.
Yeah.
But milk availability there is actually surprisingly low.
Okay, so if India is the top milk producer,
Yeah.
shouldn't every region be kind of like killing it?
You'd think so, but about 90% of the dairy farmers in eastern India are what are called smallholders, and they're dealing with some serious problems.
Okay.
High production costs, labor shortages, less and less land available.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to make a living as a farmer these days.
Definitely. And commercially available feed, well, it's just too expensive for a lot of them.
So that makes doubling incomes sound even more difficult.
Absolutely.
So how does fodder cultivation fit into all of this?
That is a great question. And this is where things get kind of clever. This abstract talks about the work of Krishi Vigyan Kendras,
What are those?
agricultural science centers.
Okay.
They're promoting year-round green fodder cultivation as a way to, get around buying that expensive commercial feed.
So they're like growing their own feed instead of buying it.
Exactly.
That makes sense. But what kinds of fodder are we talking about? And how do you ensure year-round availability?
Well, it's all about having a diverse mix, and this is really important for two reasons: nutritional value and year-round supply.
Okay.
So you've got cereal fodders like maize, bajra, and oats.
Right.
Then you have your legume fodders, things like cowpea and rice bean.
Okay.
And then, to rounding out, some grasses like hybrid napier and sorghum.
So it's like a balanced diet for the cows.
Ex-
But I'm curious about the economics. Does growing your own fodder really impact, the bottom line that much?
Well, to answer that, the abstract actually includes 4 case studies
Oh, wow.
from farmers in Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, and West Bengal. And the findings, well, they're pretty impressive.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
By cultivating their own green fodder, these farmers were able to cut down their feeding costs by something like 25–30%.
25–30%, that's huge.
It is.
But what does that actually mean in terms of, income?
Get ready for this.
Yeah.
Those farmers saw their annual net income increase, and get this, anywhere from 2.18 to 3.70 times.
Wow, that's more than double.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So it's not just saving money, it's like a whole different way of doing business.
It really is a fundamental shift. It shows that growing the right kind of food can completely change the game.
So it's about, empowering these farmers.
Exactly. To take control of their costs, become more self-sufficient. It's a win-win, more income for the farmers and a more sustainable way of farming. So let's dig into these case studies a little more. Each farmer had their own unique hurdles, and in each case, fodder cultivation offered a tailored solution.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
So, for example, you had this farmer in Bihar who just couldn't get a consistent supply of nutritious feed for his cows, especially during those lean seasons,
Yeah, that must be tough.
especially in a region where milk production's already struggling.
Yeah.
So how did he turn things around?
I don't know. Tell me.
Well, he started by setting aside some of his land,
Okay.
and he planted a mix of maize, cowpea, and hybrid napier. That way, he had a steady supply of green fodder year-round. And it was packed with all the good stuff: protein, fiber, all those things cows need to produce milk.
Okay, so he tackled that feed availability problem head on.
He did.
But did it actually, affect his income?
Oh, yeah. His milk production went way up, which of course meant his income did too. He could cover the cost of growing the fodder and still make a good profit.
That's awesome.
It is.
So what about those other farmers? Did they have similar problems?
They did, but what's interesting is how different the challenges were and how fodder cultivation provided a solution each time. For example, a farmer in Jharkhand, he was also dealing with high feed costs, but he had a whole other problem on top of that:
What was that?
limited water resources,
Oh, wow, that's a big one.
one major issue in many parts of India.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So he was not only worried about the cost of the feed itself, but also how much water it took to grow it.
That's rough. So how did he manage?
Well, the Krishi Vigyan Kendra introduced him to some drought-tolerant fodder varieties, things like sorghum and bajra.
I'd heard of sorghum.
They need less water, and they do well in that local climate.
Okay.
So by making the switch, he was able to, rely less on that expensive commercial feed. And he really saw his milk production improve, even when things were dry.
That's awesome. It's like working with nature,
Exactly.
finding solutions that fit the environment.
Absolutely. And it really highlights how important it is to understand those local conditions.
Okay, what about Odisha and West Bengal? What were they dealing with?
Well, the farmer in Odisha was running out of land.
Oh, wow, that's a tough one.
It really is. His herd was growing, and with less and less land available, it was harder and harder to meet their fodder needs.
Yeah. How do you produce more when you've got less space to work with?
It's a real dilemma.
Yeah.
But this farmer, he really embraced innovation.
Okay.
He adopted vertical farming techniques,
Oh, wow.
built a multi-tiered structure, used local materials,
Cool.
and he started growing fodder grasses like hybrid napier vertically.
That's brilliant. He's maximizing what he's got.
Exactly. He turned that limitation into an opportunity.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about the farmer in West Bengal?
He was facing a labor shortage.
Finding good help is hard these days.
It's a problem everywhere, not just in farming.
Mm.
And it was getting really expensive for him.
Yeah, I bet. So how did he handle that?
He started making silage.
Silage.
It's fermented fodder. You can store it for a long time, which means you don't have to harvest and process as often.
Oh, that's smart.
So he cut down on labor costs, and he also had a steady supply of good quality feed year-round. And as a bonus, that fermentation process actually makes the fodder easier for the cows to digest.
Oh, interesting. So he found a way to work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And, these case studies really show how versatile fodder cultivation can be. It's adaptable.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about saving money, but can you, break down the economic impact in a way that's really easy to understand?
Sure. Take that farmer from Bihar as an example.
Yeah.
Before he started growing his own fodder, he was spending something like 40% of his income just on commercial feed.
40%, that's almost half.
I know, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But after switching to homegrown fodder, that expense dropped to just 10%.
So he saved 30% of his total income. That's crazy. What did he do with all that extra money?
Well, that's what's really cool. He took that extra income and put it right back into his farm, improved his cow shed, got a new milking machine, even added more cows to his herd.
Wow, it's like a snowball effect.
It really is. That initial saving led to more investments, which then led to even bigger profits.
It's a really positive cycle.
Definitely. And it doesn't stop there.
What do you mean?
When you have a bunch of farmers in a region seeing their incomes go up, it benefits the whole community.
Oh, yeah, of course. They have more money to spend.
Exactly. They support local businesses, create jobs. It's a win-win for everyone.
Absolutely. But we've been focusing a lot on the money side of things. What about the environmental impact of all this?
That's a super important point. Remember all those commercially produced feeds we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, they often rely on farming practices that can be pretty bad for the environment.
Oh, right, like all those pesticides and stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. Heavy pesticide use, using way too much water, even deforestation to clear land for feed production. It's a lot.
So these farmers growing their own fodder are kind of breaking free from that system.
Exactly. They're reducing their reliance on those harmful practices. And there are even more environmental benefits.
Really? Like what?
When you do fodder cultivation the right way, it can actually be good for biodiversity and soil health.
That's cool.
Having all those different fodder crops creates a more balanced ecosystem.
Oh, that makes sense.
It makes it more resilient to pests and diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And by rotating crops, and including those legumes, the ones that naturally put nitrogen back into the soil,
Yeah.
well, that helps improve soil fertility and means you don't have to use as much synthetic fertilizer.
Sort of like a whole system that's good for both the people and the planet.
Exactly.
That's awesome. But I'm wondering, if this is so great, why isn't everyone doing it?
It's a good question. And there are a few possible reasons. One is just awareness. A lot of farmers might not even know about the benefits of fodder cultivation, or they might not know how to do it properly.
So it's about education.
Exactly. And this is where those Krishi Vijnan Kendras are so important. They're providing training and support to farmers,
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
getting access to good quality seeds and planting materials.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Farmers need to be able to get their hands on, high-yielding varieties that are resistant to diseases and that are right for their local conditions.
And that can be tough.
It can be. And this is where governments can really make a difference by supporting research and development.
Okay, so it's a multifaceted problem, but the solutions are out there.
Absolutely.
But we've been talking about Eastern India this whole time, and I'm wondering if this is just a local thing or if there are, bigger implications for dairy farming all over the world.
I love that you're thinking big picture. And the truth is, the core principles here, they could absolutely be applied beyond Eastern India. Imagine if dairy farmers everywhere could ditch those commercial feeds and move towards, producing their own feed in a way that's sustainable and makes sense for their region.
That would be a huge change.
It would be revolutionary. It could change the economics of dairy farming and make a huge difference for the environment.
So moving away from this centralized system to something more decentralized and locally adapted.
Exactly.
I like it. Are there any other sectors where this could work?
Definitely. Think about other livestock sectors.
Like what?
Poultry farming, pig farming.
Yeah.
The same principles apply. It's about helping farmers become more self-sufficient, more responsible towards the environment.
That's exciting. I mean, it's exciting to think about how this could change our whole food system.
It is. But let's be realistic for a second.
Okay.
Are there any downsides?
Yeah, good point. There are always challenges.
Right. There are. One thing is the initial investment.
Yeah, starting anything new costs money.
Exactly.
Right.
Farmers might need to invest in seeds, planting materials, maybe even irrigation systems, and extra labor.
That could be tough, especially for smaller farms.
Absolutely. So having access to financial support is crucial.
What else?
Well, you need to know what you're doing. Proper management, technical expertise. Fodder cultivation isn't just, throwing some seeds in the ground and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
You need to know about soil management, crop rotation, pest control, how to harvest and store everything properly.
So it's not a quick fix.
It's not.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about all the things we can't control, like climate change and crazy weather.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Droughts, floods, extreme temperatures, all of that can mess with crop yields.
Makes it really hard to maintain a steady supply.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there are definitely some hurdles, but I think the potential benefits, especially when you think about the long-term impact on the environment and on the economy.
Yeah, I think they outweigh the challenges.
I agree.
So what's the big takeaway here?
I think it's this. Fodder cultivation. It offers a real path toward a more sustainable and resilient agricultural system.
Okay.
It's not a magic bullet, but it's a powerful tool. If farmers have the knowledge, the support, and they manage things carefully, they can really improve their lives and make a positive contribution to the planet.
I like that. So for our listeners out there, even if you're not a dairy farmer in Eastern India, I think there's a lot to learn from all of this.
Definitely. It shows how small changes can make a big impact.
Yeah. And how sustainable practices can actually be good for business.
Absolutely. So think about the food producers in your own community.
Yeah, what are they struggling with?
Are there innovative solutions being explored? Ask questions. Think about how you can support a more sustainable and resilient food system right where you live.
I love that. What a great thought. Thanks for joining us for this fascinating deep dive into fodder cultivation and sustainable dairy farming.
My pleasure.
We hope it's made you curious, and maybe it's even changed how you think about the food you eat and the choices you make. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did have similar problems, but it's fascinating how they were all different. And how fodder cultivation was able to offer a solution each time.
Yeah, totally.
For instance, the farmer in Karkand, right? He was dealing with those high feed costs.
Yeah.
But he had another thing on his plate, too.
Oh, really? What was that?
Water.
Oh, water shortages.
Yeah. Limited water resources.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It's huge in many parts of India.
Totally, I can imagine.
So it wasn't just about the price tag on the feed, but how much water it took to actually grow the stuff.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. So how did he deal with that?
Well, the Krishi Vigyan Kendra, they came in and introduced him to some drought-tolerant fodder varieties.
Okay, what, like?
Things like sorghum and bajra.
I've heard of sorghum.
They don't need as much water,
Hmm.
and they're well-suited to the climate there.
Okay.
So by switching over,
Yeah.
he was able to rely less on that expensive commercial feed,
Right.
and his milk production really improved even during those drier periods.
That's amazing. It's like they're working with nature,
Exactly.
finding solutions that fit the environment.
Absolutely. And it shows how crucial it is to really understand those local conditions.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so what about Odisha and West Bengal? What were those farmers up against?
Well, the farmer in Odisha was struggling with shrinking land availability.
Oh, wow. So like not enough space.
Yeah, exactly. And with his herd getting bigger, it was a real struggle to keep up with their fodder needs.
Yeah, it's like how do you produce more when you have less and less space to work with?
It's a tough one, but this farmer, He was a real innovator.
Okay.
He decided to go
Vertical farming.
vertical farming.
Wow.
He built this multi-tiered structure, used materials that were readily available,
Okay, cool.
and started growing those fodder grasses like hybrid Napier vertically.
That's amazing. He's like maximizing his space.
Yeah, it's turning that limitation into an opportunity.
I love that. Okay, what about West Bengal?
The farmer there, he was dealing with a labor shortage.
Oh, yeah. Finding reliable help is tough these days.
It's a problem across so many industries, and it was really starting to cost him.
Yeah, I bet. So what did he do?
He started making silage.
Silage. What's that?
It's basically fermented fodder. You can store it for a long time, which means you don't have to harvest and process it as often.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he cut down on his labor costs, and he had this steady supply of nutritious feed all year round. Plus, that fermentation process, it actually helps the cows digest the fodder better.
Oh, interesting. So it's like he found a way to work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And these case studies, I think they really highlight the versatility of fodder cultivation.
For sure. It can really adapt to different situations.
It can. And we've talked about the money side of things a lot, but can we break down that economic impact a little more concretely?
Yeah, totally.
Well.
Let's get into the numbers.
Okay, so let's go back to that farmer from Bihar for a minute. Before he started growing his own fodder, he was spending something like 40% of his income just on commercial feed.
40%. That's almost half.
I know it's huge. But get this, after he switched to the homegrown stuff, that cost plummeted to 10%.
So he saved 30% of his total income.
Exactly.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What did he do with all that extra cash?
Well, this is the really cool part. He reinvested it back into his farm,
Awesome.
upgraded his cow shed, got himself a brand new milking machine, even expanded his herd.
So it's like a snowball effect.
Totally.
Hmm.
The initial savings gave him the means to make more investments, which then boosted his profits even more.
That's a great cycle to be in.
It is. And the ripple effects, they extend beyond just the individual farmer.
Oh, right, of course. What do you mean?
Well, when you have a bunch of farmers in an area seeing their income go up, it creates a positive impact on the entire local economy.
Oh, yeah, of course. They have more money to spend.
Exactly. They're supporting businesses in their community, creating jobs. It's a win-win for everyone.
Totally. But, we've been focusing a lot on the economics here. What about the environmental side of all of this?
That's a super important aspect. Remember all those commercially produced feeds we talked about?
Yeah.
A lot of them rely on these farming practices that aren't exactly eco-friendly.
Oh, right. Yeah, with all the pesticides and stuff.
Exactly. Heavy pesticides use excessive water consumption, sometimes even deforestation, to clear land for feed production.
Wow, so these farmers that are growing their own fodder, they're kind of like breaking free from that system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're becoming less dependent on those harmful practices.
Yeah.
Plus, there are even more environmental benefits.
Oh, really? Like what?
When you do fodder cultivation, right, it can actually have a positive impact on biodiversity and soil health.
That's cool.
All those different fodder crops, they help create a more balanced ecosystem.
Oh, that makes sense.
It makes the whole system more resilient, to things like pests and diseases.
Yeah.
And then when you rotate your crops and include those legumes, the ones that naturally fix nitrogen in the soil, well, that helps improve soil fertility. You don't need to rely as much on those synthetic fertilizers.
So it's a more holistic system.
Exactly. Good for the people, good for the planet.
That's so awesome. But I'm curious, if it's this beneficial, why isn't everybody doing it?
That's a great question. There are a few potential roadblocks. One is just awareness. A lot of farmers might not even know about the benefits of fodder cultivation, or they might not have the know-how to implement it properly.
Yeah, so education is key.
It really is. And that's where those Krishi Vegan Kendras come in. They're providing that training and support that farmers need.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Access to quality seeds and planting materials.
Right, because you need good materials to start with.
Absolutely. Farmers need access to those high-yielding varieties that are disease-resistant and suitable for their specific region.
Yeah, and that can be hard to come by.
It can be. And this is an area where governments can play a big role, by supporting research and development.
Right, so it's a complex issue, but it seems like there are solutions out there.
There are.
But we've been talking about Eastern India this whole time, and I'm wondering if this is just like a local thing or if there are bigger implications, for dairy farming on a global scale.
I love that you're thinking big picture, because the truth is the core principles at play here, they could be applied way beyond Eastern India.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine if dairy farmers around the world could ditch those commercially produced feeds and shift towards producing their own feed, in a way that's sustainable and makes sense for their specific location.
Yeah, that would be a huge shift.
It would be revolutionary.
Yeah.
It could change the economics of dairy farming completely and have a major impact on the environment.
So moving away from that centralized system towards something more decentralized and locally adapted.
Exactly.
I like it. Could this work in other sectors too?
Absolutely. Think about other livestock sectors.
Like what?
Poultry farming, pig farming. The same principles apply. It's about empowering farmers to become more self-sufficient and more environmentally responsible.
It's exciting to think about the potential impact on our whole food system.
It really is. But let's be realistic for a minute.
Okay.
Are there any potential downsides?
Yeah, good point. Nothing's perfect, right?
Right. There are always challenges.
Yeah.
One thing is the upfront investment.
Yeah, starting anything new always costs money.
Exactly. Farmers might need to invest in seeds, planting materials, maybe even irrigation systems, and extra labor.
That could be tough for smaller farms especially.
It can be. So access to financial resources and support is super important.
Okay, what else?
Proper management and technical know-how.
Yeah.
Fodder cultivation isn't just throwing some seeds in the ground and hoping for the best.
Right.
You need to understand soil management,
Yeah.
crop rotation, pest control, how to harvest and store everything correctly.
So it's not a quick fix.
It's not. And of course, we can't forget about all those external factors, like climate change and unpredictable weather.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Droughts, floods, extreme temperatures, all of that can really mess with crop yields.
It makes it hard to maintain that steady supply.
It does.
Ha.
So there are definitely some hurdles, but I think the potential benefits, especially when you consider the long-term impact on the environment and the economy.
Yeah, I think they outweigh the challenges.
I agree. So what's the big takeaway here?
What have we learned?
I think the key takeaway is that fodder cultivation offers a really promising path toward a more sustainable and resilient agricultural system.
Okay.
It's not a magic solution, but it's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
And when farmers have the knowledge and the support and they manage things carefully, they can really improve their livelihoods and contribute to a healthier planet.
Yeah, it really makes you think, about how dairy farming, it's not just this isolated thing.
Right.
It's connected to everything.
Absolutely.
To our lives, to the environment, to the people who are working so hard to produce this food that we eat.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about all of that when you're just, at the grocery store or grabbing a coffee.
Totally.
But this abstract, I think it really brings it all home.
It does.
The complexity of our food system
Yeah.
and how much our choices really matter.
It's a good reminder that we all have a role to play
We do.
in making things more sustainable and equitable.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be, this big overwhelming thing.
Yeah.
Small steps can make a difference.
Totally.
Like trying a new locally grown vegetable or choosing dairy products that come from, farms that are prioritizing sustainability.
Right. It's all about being mindful, being informed,
Exactly.
and sometimes just being a little adventurous and trying new things.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
we'll leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Next time you're enjoying a glass of milk or maybe a scoop of ice cream,
Yeah.
think about the journey it took to get to you.
Okay.
Think about the farmers who raised the cows,
Mm.
the land that provided the fodder, the whole network that brought it all together.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll inspire you to, seek out those more sustainable and equitable options,
Yeah.
knowing that your choices, they really do have the power to make a difference.
That's a great note to end on.
I think so.
Thanks for joining us for this fascinating look at fodder cultivation and sustainable dairy farming.
It was my pleasure.
We hope you learned something new and maybe even started thinking a little differently about, where your food comes from and the impact of your choices.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.